And he said, honey, I bet you that sack is full of more than just presents. And oh, hi there. Sorry about that. Good to see you again. How you been? Welcome back to another Cold Blood and Cocktails. As you beautiful people know, any tiff you may have, please cast it away because this is a channel of positive energy. Okay? Thank you. Oh, my galloping little ginger snaps. How you doing today? I hope wherever you're at in the world, you're having a spiffy day so far. I myself am doing wonderful, thank you. Oh, it's been a little while since we've done one of these. I actually grew a full beard. No, not really. That's nasty. But you will understand why we have a beard and kind of look like a dark-ass Santa Claus. Where's my little tail? Today's story actually has to do with the Santa Strangler, and no, it's not a strangler who killed Santa Clauses. And the moment I heard of that, I instantly thought of like a gothic Santa. Oh, I should have done a black beard. Fuck, missed opportunity. Anyways, hold the freaking phone before we go on. Let's take a moment to talk about today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by Liquid IV. As I'm sure you know, I'm a Florida baby now. Yes, I'm one step closer to finally becoming a golden girl. And believe it or not, I've actually become even more thirsty, but not the way you're thinking. And it really doesn't matter if you're in the heat or if you're in the cold. Dehydration can hit you anytime, and that is where Liquid IV steps its little kitty up. They have these fabulous hydration multiplier electrolyte drink sticks that give you 2 to 3 times the amount of hydration. Oh, that's a mouthful, but it's a mouthful of tastiness. So basically, if you pop one of these little babies inside your water bottle, if you drink that, you'll get the same amount of hydration as you would if you drank like 2 or 3 bottles of water. How cool is that? And very efficient. There's B3, B5, B6, B12, and a ton of vitamin C, and I know I said it before, but it really is delicious. And if you're worried about GMOs, gluten or dairy or soy, well, don't, because this doesn't have any of that. And she's vegan. Who is she? She sounds like she goes to festivals, but she's hydrated. Plus, for every packet that's purchased, Liquid IV goes and donates a packet for someone in need. So you can get hydrated and help others. What freaking more could you want? I personally have been spending a lot of time outside lately. I don't know if you can tell by my farmer's tan. And when I get my ass back inside in the air conditioning, my go-to is always tropical punch. And then my close second and third is acai berry and lemon lime. They're all tasty though. There are plenty of flavors to choose from in different variations. They have one for sleep, for energy, not just for sun or heat exposure. Like, honey, we have all been there. You've been sipping those bottomless mimosas with the ladies during a night on the town, and you want to feel good by the morning. Pop one of these so your body can hydrate and you won't be stuck feeling like a freaking sloshed slug for that 8 a.m. conference call. Doesn't matter if you aren't wearing pants during that Zoom meeting, at least you're not hungover. You know, I really put whatever product I'm representing to the test, and I would not steer you wrong. I've been using these for years, and I am not a code pusher, like, at all, but if you are interested in trying this and you want to save a little bit of cash, use the code POPLUX with the link down below to save 15%, and it kind of helps the company know how many people from here went over to there. So a huge thank you to Liquid IV for sponsoring today's episode of Cold Blood and Cocktails, and comment down below if you've tried this and what was your favorite flavor. Also, huge thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you so much for watching. This series is blowing up on Facebook, and it's because of your support that I'm able to collaborate with amazing brands that I actually want to work with. Like Queen Bailey says, without you, I wouldn't be here, and that's absolutely true, so thank you. And without further ado, back to our story. All right, so if you're wondering about today's drink, if you want to drink with me, I'm drinking white peach cranberry juice. God damn it, there's hair in it. That's cat hair, not even from this beard. That's special. Anyways, that juice plus a little bit of cucumber vodka. It is so damn good. Sounds like a weird combination, but it's the shit. Fuck a duck. How am I gonna do this? Oh, yeah. This is just how it's gonna be for the whole damn day. And that's all right, worth it. Anyways, it's been a minute since we've done one of these, but as y'all probably know, I moved across the whole damn country. It took me a long time to set this new place up, but holy shit, it's beautiful now. I'll give you little sneaky peeks on my Instagram story. Make sure you follow me on there. But I'm very happy, and we have our new background. This isn't how it's gonna always be. I kind of wanted shelves with lighting behind me because now I can switch shit up every now and again. I can change the color when I want. I can rearrange things. The sparkly backdrop is unfortunately no longer with us, but she had her run. It was like way too long. Normally I'm not one to complain about things being too long, but holy hell. So yes, we're in our new location, and I'm just happy that you're here. But without further ado, let's just hop our little taints and titties into this story, shall we? Today's tale starts way back in 2002. Oh, a good time. Legally blonde, low-rise jeans and chokers. The worst clothes ever on over-tanned skin. Oh, memories. Although I guess technically it does start earlier than that, but that's when this cold case from the 1970s was reopened. And for Richard, nothing made him hotter than a cold case. It just, made his nips go cray-cray. And just since like 1960, over 10,000 cases were just sitting there colder than an ice cube to a wax nip, and they were just chilling, collecting dust in his office storage. Also, there is a flood warning, so if you hear rain beating the shit out of my window, ignore it. It's just an average day here in Orlando, and I love it. Anyways, can you imagine that? Like 10,000 lives lost with families who had no idea what the fuck happened? Did their daughter run off to Europe? Did they have an accident? Were they murdered? And if they were murdered, what about all those killers that got away with it? But even though this case was old and cold, which, relatable, any kind of answer that could be brought to friends and family was at least a step in the right direction. But little did Richard think that two women who had never even met, never even heard of each other, and lived in completely different parts of the world would help put a nail in this case's coffin. Every pun intended. These ladies were Jean and Renee, both with secrets that haunted the shit out of them for years. But what the buttfuck did the secret have to do with? Of course, murder. More specifically, a string of sex murders. These crimes began in 1972 in San Pedro, California. A newly widowed woman named Lois was murdered in her bed. And then, 2 years after that, a 50-something-year-old woman named Catherine turned up dead in the park. And police didn't really connect the two murders because they were so different, and they certainly didn't connect them with a third murder a month later. The body of Anna was dumped very nakedly on the side of the road, and the only similarity between all three cases was that they were all really neat murders. Like, not a shit ton of evidence was left behind, which told the police that these were probably intentional killings, not just like a whack and dump kind of situation. Hold on, we need a sip. Should I grab a straw? No, that's too easy. Another commonality was that this killer was sexually assaulting all of the women and choking them to death. But really, you can't figure out another way to get your rocks off. Sounds very déclassé to me. Well, other than the fact that their age was between 40 and 60, there really wasn't much more that the police had to work with. Whoever had done this was cleaner than a gay with a fresh fade and left no fingerprints, no clues. They really tidied up after themselves. And of course, nary a damn soul witnessed a thing. I don't get how nobody saw any of these bodies being dumped, yet every other minute there's a Karen and Ken up everybody's asses. Like now is when we're choosing to be blind to things. And lest we forget, this was the 1970s when DNA was as futuristic of a thought as a Brazilian wax. So with the old school techniques that they had to work with, these cases just went cold. But now, flash forward to the early 2000s, this was still a shit show, messy ass case, but 2,500 miles away from Richard was the missing puzzle piece that was about to blow this clusterfuck of a storm into a full-on hurricane. So in 2003, Jean was living her best life. She had a great job in the accounting department in a big city company, wearing pastel pencil skirts with teased hair, very stylish. But there really wasn't a day that went by that she didn't think about the awful memory from 30 years ago. And oddly enough, it was around the same time as those nasty murders back in the 70s. Who'da thunk? Back then, she was in college. She had met a guy who lived in Cali, and it seemed like all was well with her new little surfer bro. And by the sounds of him, I think we'd all like to take a little ride on his boogie board if you catch my drift. Anywho, the new couple decided to say fuck it, and they moved in together, so Jean flew out to San Luis Obispo to find an apartment, and then her mans would head over in a few weeks. Oh, hold on, there's part of my beard on my leg. It feels like a bug. God, I'm shedding like a molting chicken. But yeah, life was really good for this couple, and her new boyfriend's stepdad, Adolf, picked her up at the airport, and she was so impressed with how nice he was. He was kind of on the elderly side, a very kind fatherly figure with an infectious smile, a big white beard, and was happier than a hog and shit to help Jean move into their new apartment and get her ready for his stepson. They'd go to flea markets, home decor stores, rug shops, furniture warehouses, and Jean was really finding a true friend in Adolf. But of course, the dirty little geezer had to go and spoil the friendship soup that they were making, because a couple days before her boyfriend was supposed to be there, Jean caught Adolf staring at her, and he looked creepy as fuck. I'm talking like dude across from the parking lot staring at you while his one hand is moving kind of creepy. But it's almost like he had feelings for Jean, like in their time together, he'd fallen in love with her. He'd leave her little notes and Jean would just brush it off, but as you can imagine, this made her hella uncomfortable. And if this wasn't weird enough, one day when they were in the car together, he started telling her a story about a serial killer in San Pedro. At first she was like, ooh, we love a good murder mystery, but then she started to realize that maybe this wasn't just a story, because what he was saying made the hair on her arms stand up, and if she knew then what she knew today, her hair probably would have stood up and ran away from fright. Because at the end of this story, he said it was all about him. Yeah, according to Adolf, he'd murdered 4 women. Suspicious shot? I think the fuck yes. Jean is just sitting there in the passenger seat while Adolf is driving thinking, what in the titty-tickling tomfoolery is he saying? Like, am I being punked? Is this a prank? And maybe he was trying to impress her and get her to like him by being a bad boy Santa daddy? Because it's kind of working. No, not really. Not at all. She was not feeling his candy cane and she was about to deck his halls with a big ol' hell no. He went on like everything was normal and said that 3 of the women were in LA and 1 was in San Fran. So Jean says, okay, I'll play along, old man. Tell me more about these murders. And he says, well, I strangled and sexually assaulted all of them. They were my 4 little sins. And while he's telling his little story, Jean is thinking, what if I become his 5th sin? Which, what? Can we get another suspicious and a creepy shot? Just sitting there burning some petrol and all of a sudden you pull out that card? Oh, damn. Here I am stressing out about beard hair in my cocktail. Jean was from out of town, so she'd never even heard of these murders and Google wasn't a thing yet, so she kind of had to take his word for it. But she was also taking everything that he said with a rock lamp-sized grain of salt. That is, until she saw his ass angry. She walked up to him while he was pounding on a car, just beating the hell out of it, angry over some small thing, and she was like, whoa, this dude probably could have killed someone. So she'd spend her days at the library hiding out, just too scared to go back to her apartment. So when Adolf's stepson finally did arrive, she told him all about what Adolf had done, and they both built up the courage to go to the police. Which would be really freaking hard, don't you think? Like, to go to the police and have to rat out your own step-parent? But the moment Jean started speaking to the cops, they looked thoroughly unimpressed and were like, you're lying, chickapoo. And Jean is like, what the actual fuck? I'm confiding in you and you're supposed to protect citizens and you're laughing at me. And they pretty much just tell her to lay off the crack pipe and send her off, but just to be safe, they end up faxing her story over to the LAPD, who, I might add, took her much more seriously. In fact, they hauled Adolf's ass into the station by the ear and were like, yo, you seem nice, but we have some dirt on you. And not just dirt, according to our sources, we have an entire fucking mud bath on your ass. But then Adolf opened his mouth, started talking, and they turned into butter. Like butter. He was charming, welcoming, warm, moist. No, not moist, but very friendly. Which, can we get another creepy suspicious shot? Because when I read that he denied everything after just telling Jean his story, I got chills because this is so similar to almost every other serial killer that we've talked about on here, where they're sweet and then they'll turn around and slice your throat, all while smiling. But the cops were like, oh my god, let me give you a warm lap blanket, a cup of tea, you're free to go. They had no proof of anything other than Jean's hearsay, so they say bye-bye and threw the case away. Needless to say, Jean was creeped the hell out by Adolf, and just living with him for the rest of the summer was more uncomfortable than sitting naked on a hot merry-go-round. Adolf's stepson ends up slapping a ring on Jean's finger, they get married, they have a lovely soiree, but Adolf wasn't invited. In fact, Jean was hoping the dude would be out of their lives forever. Yeah, I don't blame her one bit. But then a couple weeks after the wedding, Adolf sent them a postcard that was like, hey, I'm gonna be passing through. Don't know if you want to get a brekkie, maybe some brunch, go to Olive Garden, maybe get some breadsticks. Jean's like, ew. Because not only did he send a postcard, he sent along a few love letters apologizing profusely to Jean, still saying that, oh, you're the love of my life, I want your coconuts and my pina colada, blah, blah, blah. And Jean is just standing there like, what the fuck? But she ignored the letters and they eventually stopped coming. I wish I could say the same about Adolf. Giggity. Ew. But really, Adolf did seem to have disappeared, and Jean and her hubby tried to get on with their lives and live somewhat of a normal existence. Unfortunately, shit really hit the shingles with their relationship, and they ended up getting divorced, and the memories of Adolf kinda started to fade away. Sadly, so too did the investigation of the 3 murdered women. Time goes on, a lot of fucking time actually, almost 30 years, 27 to be exact. And then, one day out of the clear blue sky like a pile of seagull shit comes a story that would change everything. But this time, the story wasn't being told to Jean, but to a woman named Renee. Picture it, spring 2002. The case of the murdered women had gone colder than a penguin's ass. A man was taking care of his grandchildren, Renee's kids, and he decided to tell her a little story. He said, oh yeah, so I sexually assaulted and murdered 4 women in my life, wink wink. And Renee's like, what the fuck? Do you have dust in your eyes or are you being serious? Like he's just sitting there with one hand on his chin, his other hand around a cup of herbal tea as warm as Mr. Rogers, and casually tells her this. Renee thinks thinks this dude must be fucking joking, because how could the sweet innocent man ever put anyone in harm's way? Like, he was helping raise her children. So she's like, sorry, there must have been noodles in my ears. Say that again? And he's like, yeah, I killed 4 ladies. She was in shock. This was the guy she'd called Grandpa, even though she herself wasn't married to her son anymore. The man who would babysit her kids and take them for chocolate dipped ice cream and to school. And here she is sitting face to face with him in utter disbelief. And who do you think this man was? Why, none other than Adolf. Renee's like, okay, so how'd you do it? And without any remorse or hesitation, he's like, I strangled them. She's like, did you make a noose? Like, how the hell did this happen? And he goes on to explain very nonchalantly that he just choked them. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Like, not even in the fun, kinky way either. He was like, I squeezed their little necks until I saw all of the life draining out of them. And this old bastard loved watching them fight for their lives. Like, why couldn't he just feed the geese like normal old people? And to top it off, 3 of these murders had taken place in San Pedro and the last in San Fran. 4 ladies, 4 sins. Sound familiar? Right after Gramps told her this, Renee hauled her ass out of the room and went straight to the police. So in comes Richard, who's like, Jean and Renee have literally never met. They don't know who the other is. They're across the entire country from each other, yet they're presenting the exact same story about the exact same man. Can you say suspicious? I'm out. Oh, hold on. They pulled up this dusty ass case as she was telling them the details, and sure as shit, she was telling them things that only the police would have known. After all, there was no documentation of this other than Jean's original statement, so how could she have information on this otherwise? They were like, holy shit, fact, and they started scrambling because this information completely reopened the case. They said, Renee, do you think maybe you could call this guy on the phone and get another confession out of him? She's like, ooh, double agent, hell to the yes, let me go grab my pleather tights and my hairband, I'll be right back. So she calls, and of course he answers in his grandfatherly voice and says, oh, hello, dear. She says, Grandpa, I need to know that everything's gonna be okay. And he replies saying, oh, everything will be fine. I take my problems daily with the Lord. And Renee says, but what the fuck about the story you told me on Thursday? And he's like, well, mistakes were made. And that's really all they get. Like, they were still going on hearsay, so the cops couldn't really arrest him yet. Like, for her, he definitely confirmed this story, but because they didn't physically hear the story, it didn't go anywhere. But Renee's whole world after that changed, because just like Jean, Renee was now wondering if she would be his 5th victim now that he'd confided in her. But as fast as a firework explosion after 3 decades, this San Pedro case was hot as fire. The detectives end up having a meeting and they think, okay, we don't have much on this, so why don't we start from the beginning? So off to Pittsburgh they go, where Jean now lives. They didn't even warn her either. They literally showed up on her doorstep, and before they even introduced themselves, she knew what kind of a hoedown showdown this was gonna be. She invited them in, but was scared shitless because their arrival meant that everything Adolf had told her back in 1975 was true. And how much danger would she have been in had she let Adolf stay in her life? Like, these cops could have very easily have been visiting her grave instead of her home. How about another scary shot for that? Oh fuck, I hit the front of my teeth. Oh. But honestly, let's be real, Adolf had all of these years to kill her, and he didn't, so he probably wouldn't have anyways. But how can you know? Jean was thinking, once a killer, always a killer. How many more victims did he have between the years? Was she now a target? And did he know that she was now talking to the police? Even if what both she and Renee had said was true, there was nothing to back it up, and it would just be hearsay. The police asked Jean if she had a picture of Adolf, which of course she did. I don't think she was technically a hoarder, but she did have a difficult time throwing memorable things away, so her entire attic was just like a trip down memory lane and was full from top to bottom. So she went up there and came back down with a bag full of shit that would shock the pants off of these investigators. Inside was a picture of Adolf, his love letters, and unbeknownst to her, a date book that she had completely forgotten that she'd kept. And lucky for her, it dated back to the 1970s. She jotted down important dates and kind of used it as a little memory bank. She opened that bad boy up, and right there in ink from 1975 were the words, Dad confesses sins. Jack fucking pot. This was a goldmine because it showed that whatever she had said was credible. It certainly didn't incriminate him, but damn, this sure as shit helped. The only thing though is that when investigators looked into Adolf's background, he was squeaky clean. Not a single morsel of evidence pointed his way. He had never been arrested, never gone to jail, never even a warning for getting a blowy behind the bar. Dude didn't even have a fucking parking ticket. And he looked like the friendliest teddy bear, the ideal grandpa. Like, if you put him in a big red suit suit and brought him to the mall, kids would start sitting on his lap. But who really even was this guy? Well, for one, he was very popular down in San Pedro. He'd driven a taxi there locally for years, he was a World War II vet, a loving grandpa, and he'd have engaging conversations at the local bars. And by the time the case had reopened, Adolf had moved away from Renee and spent a majority of his time working at a Porsche repair shop. And of course, everyone freaking loved him. Nobody could figure out why someone as likable and wonderful as him would do something like this. Psh, bitch, that's what everyone says about serial killers. Oh, they're always so handsome, or they're so nice, or they're so pretty. It's just no way a nice person or a pretty person could ever do something like that. And so the cops start second guessing and thinking, maybe we're wrong about this. Even the guy who owned the Porsche shop was sure that the police were just framing this old guy to close the case. And investigators kind of stopped dead again because they had hit a wall. There were no more witnesses that had come forward, no evidence other than these ladies' stories, and the few crumbs of evidence they had back in LA wasn't enough to feed a damn mouse, let alone close a case. And they fully expected this shit to go cold again because what little evidence they did have on these cases had been destroyed. Nobody knows why, but there was just nothing left. So investigators had one last option. In cases of sexual assault, the coroner will take smears from different parts of the body. Now that they were in the 2000s and DNA was as common as bath tissue, cops were hoping that maybe some of these smears hadn't deteriorated and they could extract a little something something. But gay sigh, no luck. It seemed that these slides had just been too old to do anything with. And then by chance, one of the detectives had the idea to schmooze with the clerk at the coroner's office. Some hunky little stud muffin batted his eyelashes to the lady at the front desk and she was like, maybe we have something. If I were the cop, I would have been like, ooh, is it a Kiki and mimosas? But no, that's not what she was talking about, and unfortunately, there was no luck. But then, just as they were about to leave that dark and musty, dusty room, the lady comes back and says, you know, we do have a random-ass file cabinet filled with random-ass files from unsolved cases. Maybe there's something in there? At this point, detectives were desperate for anything, so they thumbed through the files knowing this was a 1 in a billion chance. But what do you know? A few minutes in, they find a slide from the first victim from 1972, Lois. The detectives are doing all they can not to shit themselves from excitement. Even though all the other slides they submitted were totally useless, maybe, just maybe, this low glass bitch was their ticket. The slide was sent off to the DNA lab and everyone waited on pins and needles. Now, in Hollywood, the results come back in like 5 minutes, but in real life, the test takes almost 2 months. Then, at long freaking last, Richard finally got a call from the DNA analyst. They said, guess the fuck what? We got DNA from the slides you sent in. Woo! Needless to say, cake was definitely served that night at the office. But the case wasn't solved because they needed Adolf's DNA to match up with the slide, and how would they get that? Surely the guy wouldn't be stupid enough to just willingly hand it over when he knew he was guilty about something terrible. And without a warrant, they couldn't just walk up to Adolf and grab a piece of DNA off him like candy from a toddler. No, they decided ain't no school like the old school. Let's bring him donuts and coffee and maybe we can get some DNA from his leftovers. I mean, who doesn't love a good cream-filled long john, am I right? Wait, are we still talking about donuts? Hopefully Adolf would voluntarily take a sip of coffee and discard the cup because unless it was discarded intentionally by him, they were shit out of luck. The only problem, Adolf was almost impossible to track down. He was a very nomadic man that would just up and move from place to place before really anyone could get to know him. He wasn't on the run, yet he always seemed to be a few steps ahead of the cops. Investigators would arrive at the old place, talk to everyone around the area, the homeless people, the shopkeepers, neighbors, but when the cops showed them a picture, everyone was like, oh my good, it's Santa Claus. Fucking ho ho ho, bitch. Also, my mustache is coming off, we'll ignore it. And letting this case go cold yet again really wasn't an option. Like, how many more chances would they have at cracking this? Like, Adolf was not a spring chicken anymore. So for months, investigators were going to every trailer park, motel, campground, whatever, in hopes of just finding some kind of lead on him. And meanwhile, investigators are also trying to figure out Adolf's history to pinpoint exactly why he had murdered. Investigators found that he'd been born in Kentucky in 1926 to a German immigrant. His mom had died a few years after he was born, so he tried to earn the family a little bit of extra money by carving walking sticks and selling them on the street. Later in life, he met his wife Annelle, adopted her son, and they all moved to California. He took up a job as a cab driver in San Pedro, and his wife began teaching dance at a local studio and secretly stripped on the side. She sounds fun. The couple was a rather odd pair too. Like, Annelle was very fit and health conscious, outgoing and vivacious, while Adolf was a little bit of a hermit. And then after 30 freaking years of marriage, Annelle said, Adolf, I don't really like you anymore, and they got a divorce. Adolf then remarried really quickly and really really quickly got another divorce. And police would later find out that using his cabbie service, Adolf would pick up lonely or alcoholic or sick women, basically anybody vulnerable because he was a weak little bitch and couldn't put up a fight, but pretty much just anyone who reminded him of an L. He'd pick them up, he'd bind, sexually assault, and strangle them. We'll flash forward to the search for Adolf, and finally, Detective Bob got a tip from a woman who had spotted the camper Adolf was supposedly living in. Bob gives her his card, and like half an hour later, he gets a phone call. He picks up expecting it to be the nice lady he'd spoken with earlier, but instead, he'd hit the luckiest jackpot in all of California. Adolf himself was on the phone, and before Bob could even get a word in, he suggested that they meet at a local coffee shop. Bob was just pitching a tent from glee. After 3 decades, this case was finally starting to work in their favor. He was like, I can talk with this guy even if we get him to take a single sip of his cup. 1 drop of saliva or a little bit of backwash was all the DNA that they needed. Isn't modern science just the tits? How do they do it? But Bob's like, okay, so this is suspicious as hell because he doesn't know that we're coming after him for possibly murder. Why does he want to meet with us? And what's more, we have to be super DL about this, like I can't have a wire put up my back, it just has to be me. But the main goal would be to get the guy to take as many sips as possible. So they meet up and things are going smooth. Too smooth, like a freshly waxed Happy Trail smooth. After a few questions about car break-ins or something, Adolf interrupts Bob and says, so we aren't gonna talk about the murders that happened in San Pedro like back in the 70s? His whole plan of being cool, calm, and collected just went straight down the toilet because he knows that at any point, Adolf could just up and leave. But strategically, he hid his sweat stains and carried the conversation back to the robberies. Shortly after, Adolf stood up, completely forgot about the cup that he left on the table, and they both walked out to their cars. And the moment that Santa Claus-looking hillbilly drove off, Bob rushed his ass back into the restaurant, grabbed the cup, and immediately sent it over to the crime lab. For 2 months, the DNA was poked at and prodded. Sounds like a college party I went to. Put the anal in analyzing. But the whole case now rested on that coffee cup and whether or not these microscopic bits of evidence would match up. Adolf, meanwhile, moseyed on with his nomadic life, completely unsuspecting. Everyone in the office was nearly shitting blood from stress ulcers, and finally, after 6 weeks, there was an answer. Oh, the DNA extracted from the slides and pulled from the suspect matched perfectly with Adolf. What freaking luck. After decades, the pieces to this very mismatched puzzle were finally found. But DNA wasn't quite enough to fully convict him, so for the next few months, detectives put Adolf under high surveillance. They tapped his phones, they had cops constantly trying to locate him and really track his ass down, until eventually on a blustery September morning in 2003, they tracked him down to his friend Tony's car shop. His camper was just sitting there like right in plain sight, and Tony nearly fainted from shock when police told him what Adolf had done. Tony's like, go ahead, he's inside, arrest the man. Well, they couldn't arrest him quite yet, but instead searched the RV for even more evidence. Bob's partner Richard comes into the trailer to talk with Adolf, just sweating bullets, because he knew how important this interview and investigation was. And Adolf begins by arrogantly saying, you ain't got nothing on me. And Richard's like, so your ass didn't talk to Gene about the 4 sins of your life? You know, the 4 murders? Huh, sound familiar? And Adolf's like, the fuck are you talking about? Richard continues saying, you know, the 4 sins involving the women that were killed, which made Adolf start to sputter and stutter like an old engine. And Richard goes on saying, so you didn't kill them? And finally, Adolf finds his words and says, I don't know where the fuck you're getting your information from. I haven't killed anyone or ever said that I did. I mean, come the fuck on. This dude might as well been Santa Claus because his world was basically a fantasy. So Bob tells him, look, we have evidence showing that you killed these women. We just want a confession. But Adolf keeps saying, how can I confess to something I have no idea about? And the conversation basically ends by him saying, I will take this up with the Lord and my lawyer. How about that? And an hour later, Adolf was arrested and charged with first-degree murder for killing Lois, which was the only match for their DNA test, but at least it's something. He was held on $1 million bail, which obviously he didn't meet. And now in 2006, almost 35 years after Lois was found strangled in her bed, the trial for her murderer finally begins. At this point, he was 80, he was very frail, but he was still able to cast the darkest looks ever to Jean and Renee. Jean remembers getting chills down her spine when she caught Adolf giving her the evil eye, but she did not let it spook her when she took the stand. Both she and Renee told the jury exactly what he'd admitted to the both of them, and after a 3-week trial, it took only 1 day to get the verdict, guilty of murder in the 1st degree. And the courtroom was just ecstatic because after almost 4 decades, this crime was finally put to rest. It was just one of 10,000 that was on Richard's desk, grotesque, but still, one is better than none. Adolf was given a life sentence after living almost his entire life as a free man. He tried to retaliate, saying there were privacy issues with the cop taking his cup before a restaurant employee threw it away, but at the age of 89, he passed away before really anything was done. They were able to pretty much prove that he'd killed Lois, Catherine, Anna, and Leah, and then he was suspected of actually killing two other individuals, Irene and Maud, who were both separately strangled, but had a small amount of evidence pointing towards Adolf being the culprit. But this case frustrates the hell out of me because so much more could have been done way earlier on, but I guess way back when, people really couldn't take it anywhere. There wasn't any DNA, so how would they have known who the killer was without any clear evidence? But I'm still allowed to be pissed off from it, damn it. What an interesting story, right? I don't understand why he even admitted it to the women. Like, he could have died not going to jail. It's like he wanted to be caught, which is a very common factor with these killers. I don't know if it's their conscience or they just want to change the scenery or what. Want to change the scenery, go to Cabo, not prison. But yes, a very dark tale. But my loves, there you go. Thank you so much for being here. I love having you. And if you want a little bit more me in your lives, please feel free to join my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Poplix. You get videos a day early, a bunch of little Patreon only tidbits. It's a fun time. And you know what? It is cheap, fun, and fancy, just like this bitch. And like always, please be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell down below so that you're notified anytime I upload a new video. Don't forget my newest collection of highlighters, including Black Ice, which does change from black to white, will be available again soon at thepoplix.com. Also, my latest album, Kiss of Fame, is available everywhere online that music is sold. Thank you so much to everyone who's supporting them. Comment down below, let me know what you thought of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at OfficialNady, and you can follow me online at thepoplix.com. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I will see you again soon. Bye!